Today, we continue the conversation with a woman who is adaptable, focused, and has a growth mindset. In these distinct times in our history, I don't know that there is anything more valuable than that. Nicole Jordan has held executive positions for companies like David Jones, Warner Brothers, and Sportsgirl, and founded 6 of her own bootstrap businesses as well. She sits on 4 boards, worked with VCs, SMEs, and accelerator companies to create growth strategies. And yet it's her story of adopting her Korean son when he was only 4 weeks old as a single mother that has me intrigued about what drives this woman. She has worked for herself in business. She has been the managing executive for big names in business, which I kind of translate to mean she did all the work behind the scenes, but somebody else got the kudos. She does the grunt work to win grants for organizations, and she's found herself in a whole new realm of reinvention during COVID-19. I cannot wait to uncover what a woman like this is thinking at a time like now. So, Nick, you ready for this?
Sure am.
For those of you who are joining us on the YouTube, and I encourage you guys to go check it out, you have to watch people's faces when they're being introduced. It's kind of like, is that me?
Is that really me?
Is that really me? And I'm always open to correction. I interviewed Dawn Fraser the other day, and I had her age 1 year wrong. It was perfect. She didn't say it at first, but she wove it in, the correction.
Oh.
So feel free to do that at any time. And look, I know we're going to talk about innovation. We're going to talk about the planet, business, and all that fun stuff. But first and foremost, tell us the story of adopting your son, William, all those years ago.
Sure. Well, look, thank you so much for having me today. It's been a long time coming. We've been trying to plan this for so long. And I think this is actually the perfect time because, as you said, this is a great story to share. So I'm really excited, Sarah. So thank you very much. Adopting my son is the greatest thing that I've ever done. You listed off all these achievements, but nothing is as great as that moment. And I don't consider it an achievement. I consider it a gift. I am just so lucky to have him in my life. So it was a really long process. It took over 3 years to have all of the paperwork approved, and then you're there every day waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for a phone call. So, you know, most humans go through a 9-month gestation period. I went through a 3-year gestation period, and I had no idea when this baby was coming. And then one day I got the call, and I nearly fainted. It was just, I just couldn't believe it. And then after getting the call to say that William was my son, I had to wait until all of the paperwork and all of the approvals had gone through, because there's all the government bureaucracy to go through until he could come home. So all I had was a photo, which I still have, of him at 4 weeks old to look at and to cherish until the moment that I got to travel over to bring him home. So that became then it was almost 6 months before I could bring him home. So that was a really, really long time to wait to breathe in that baby. But I will say that the day we met was absolutely unbelievable. I was in Seoul, and I've walked into Eastern, which is the wonderful hospital. It's a private facility because they don't have a social welfare system in Korea. And I've walked in there, and Mrs. Byung, the lady who'd been looking after William for all this time, she brought William in to meet me, and I've walked into the room, and he's seen me as I've come into the room, and his eyes have locked on me like, where have you been? I have been waiting for you, and you are now never allowed out of my sight. And everyone in the room started crying because normally that doesn't happen, but there was such a powerful connection between us. It was just, it was quite spiritual. It was just amazing. And I have to say that in the time leading up to adopting William, I used to have these dreams of dancing with a baby with black hair. And I didn't remember them, but it wasn't until William was home and I was having one of those moments, and I'm sure you as a parent, Sarah, know this, when your baby is asleep, that's when you sometimes have that shower that you haven't had for a couple of days. And I would shower with the door open and the sound on in his room so I could hear him. And I'm finally having that shower with one foot in the shower and one foot out. And I'm under the water and I went, oh my God, that's that dream. I remembered having the dream of dancing with the baby, and it was him. So I'd been having this for years. So yeah, and then there he was.
And like, I feel the emotion. I always know when something's connecting, when I feel that emotion straight away. And I did when you said you had that dream of a baby with black.
Yeah.
So was that something as a little girl, like you always knew you wanted to have a child? Because to have a child as a single mother, to go through all that you went through from an adoption point of view, to me, the commitment and like what you did to bring it into manifestation is massive. So when did this start, this desire?
Well, you know, I love children, and children really love me. There's something, I don't know, my mom always says I should have had, you know, 100 kids. We'll be walking through a shopping centre and babies will lean out of their prams to engage with me. I don't know, I just connect really naturally with them. I love them. I really, really love them. And I didn't know. I didn't expect, you know, I didn't know how my life was going to turn out. But I got to a point in my life where I knew that I wanted to have a family. And this was the way I was going to form my family. Do you know, I never actually imagined being pregnant. You know how when your kid's growing up and, you know, you play with having the, you know, the pillow in your tummy and everything. For me, I never got any of that. I never could see it. So it just felt, it all felt really natural. Yeah. So
That is really cool.
Mm,
I like hearing that, because I think it's really nice to be able to honor the way that it was meant to happen for you. And that, you know, when you hear these stories, I think, again, this podcast is about creating possibility for people. And one of the best ways to do that is to see someone else doing it. We have had another woman on here who's had adopted children as well, and it was very powerful. And so now, before we press the record button, we realized that you have William's very intense. So when he looked at you with that intensity straight away, what do you think that was connecting with?
I think it was our hearts that were connecting. It was connecting, you know, somewhere deep within each of our souls. We knew that we'd been waiting for each other. It was just undeniable. When you adopt a child, they go through, Docs doesn't do too much for you. They want to make sure that you're doing all the right things, but there's no support mechanisms in place. But you do have regular meetings with them once you come home. And one of the challenges that a lot of adoptive parents have is being able to form a bond with their child, right? And I became friends with some other adoptive parents, and one of them really, really struggled. You know, she openly admitted she didn't like her son. We're no longer friends because I couldn't have that relationship with her. I couldn't be authentic anymore when she told me that. But that didn't happen with us. It was really meant to be. It was something so much more powerful than physical. William grew in my heart. He didn't grow in my tummy. And, you know, it's so, that's how we both felt about each other. I could articulate that. He couldn't because he was just a baby. But, you know, it's very normal. You know, we talk about, I wrote him a book when he was a baby, before he came home, about his adoption story. As a little baby growing up, we used to do cutout pictures together of his adoption story. So we've talked about it since day dot. We've been back to Korea. We have a strong connection with Korea. So it's all very natural. It's all really normal. And yeah, for me, it was something, you know, very deep, very primal, actually, the connection. Yeah.
I've never heard anybody say that about grew in their heart. That was really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how I transitioned to a business conversation after that. Somehow it's like you're many things. And I know that you were a businesswoman before. Yeah, William, and you still
Mm,
are. So what
mm.
is it, what do you love most about business? Because I know you've experienced many sides of it. So what is it about business that you love?
I think I like creating things. At the end of the day, I'm a creator, and it's a little bit like Lego. I used to love building with Lego, and I think it's that. I love building things. I love creating things, and you know what else? I love making people feel good. I love making people feel happy, and if I can go and make a difference in a business, that's going to improve the business. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what business we're in. We're all in customer service. We all want to make people feel happy, right? So your podcast is about trying to bring joy to people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm working in retail, it's about bringing joy to people's lives, and I want to do that authentically. So when I had my retail businesses, I didn't want to just sell stuff to put money in the till. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to bring joy to people's lives, and people really felt that. And I think that's what the success was of my business. And so even when I worked with other organizations, that's how I've always done it. I really take it to heart, and there's something that's really genuine and quite passionate about what I do. So yeah, I love building things and I love making people happy.
Yeah,
It's as simple as that.
I like hearing that.
And I'm good at it.
Yeah, exactly. And I can see how you've had lots of different roles inside of that. So you've had your own businesses.
Mm.
So as long as you're making people happy and improving the lot in life, you're happy. Doesn't matter which.
Yeah, pretty much. Although it's really interesting. I've obviously had my own businesses. I've been in the corporate world. I've moved out of the corporate world. I'm back in the corporate world. And people constantly say, Nikki, why don't you go and start another business? And I'm at another sort of crossroads now, because I don't want to do that. I've done it and I've been successful at it. And I think you as an athlete would understand that too. Once you've achieved a certain thing, you want to, what's the next thing? And so, yes, I could go and do that, but I don't want to go back and repeat something. I want to go on and do something else. So for me, it's about being able to do something with purpose. And I've got beyond wanting to run my own business. I now want to do something with purpose. And that's where working in the innovation sector has been really interesting for me. And I think it's now about saying, all right, I want to give back. And how do I give back? How do I give back to community? How do I give back to the world? What can I do to bring my skills to where we're positioned in society now? And there's lots of challenges we're facing. I mean, here we are coming out of this pandemic, and how are we going to rebuild the world? Because I don't think it's business as usual. I think it's this is a great opportunity for us to look at the world differently, and to think about how we can do a better job than what we've been doing before.
And in line with that and purpose, I know you say there's no planet B. So coming out of COVID-19, like you're referring to, and as the restrictions begin to lift, especially here in Australia, a lot of people are going to rise from this moment without the same job or the same work they had before.
Yeah.
What would you say to them? Like, how can they deal with this idea of, literally innovating from a work point of view?
Well, as you know, I'm one of those people who's coming out of this with the rug having been pulled from underneath me. And I think...
Hold on, can I interrupt for one sec? Let's talk about the rug for a sec, because
okay.
That's a really good expression. So what does that feel like? What's that moment like when you think things are one way and then whooshka, it's different?
Yeah. So look, I think there's a few things to sort of unpack there. First of all, it wasn't unexpected. Because when I'm in my work environment, I don't ever look at my role or what I'm doing just with a lens of me. And I think that's because I always take a business leadership sort of view on things. So I expected it. but even when you expect it, it doesn't make it any easier to deal with, right? So, sorry, I haven't had a haircut in months and my hair just keeps falling in my eyes, so I have to keep pushing.
She's doing the Justin Bieber. For those of you that are
Yeah.
audio, I'm kidding. It's all good.
I'm sorry. And so, yeah, even though I expected it, and my team even said, because I'd articulated it to my team, that I thought that this was going to happen. They were like, "Oh my God, Nicole, you named it, you called it." Even though I had anticipated it, it didn't take away from that gut-wrenching feeling, that wounding, like you've been punched in the stomach and you've been winded, that it didn't take away from any of that. Because one of the things that happens, because I've been on the other side of the table as well, is that it challenges your self-esteem. And as women, we struggle with that in a professional sense anyway, because we suffer from all sorts of issues like imposter syndrome and, feeling like we're good enough and all the rest of it. And so for that to happen, your first thing is, well, what did I do wrong? Yeah. And that's such a female response, why wasn't I good enough, to keep my job? So I guess the good thing about this circumstance is that, you're not alone. Whereas in other times when I've been delivering that news to people, that's very much the response. Why did you pick me over somebody else? Whereas in my situation, 1/3 of our organisation lost their job, a third, yeah.
Awesome.
And I was only relatively new to the organisation. It made perfect sense because obviously they needed to reduce the numbers of people, and the woman who has taken over my job, she's taken on my job plus she's the chief operating officer. So she's taking on more. I hadn't been there long enough to do that. I couldn't have possibly. So I get it, but it didn't take away from the fact that it's wounding. And what makes it worse is that I actually really love what I was doing. And even now, I love the organisation. I can't be angry. I can't be upset because a lot of the time you go through all of these stages of grief. And I don't know whether it's that I just haven't got there yet, but I haven't got to the angry part where I'm like, damn them, for doing that to me. Yeah, I can't be angry. I'm still in the space of I just feel really sad because I really love what I was doing and I love the organisation, and I think very highly of the organisation. So, look, ask me in a couple of months' time, I might feel completely differently.
Well, I'm thinking that's a good point you're making about a lot of people might be able to have anger or disappointment against an organization, whereas during this time, like you said, we get it. Of course it happened. So I think a lot of people will relate to that. And then all your experience, because you've done so many different things over your working life, where does your mindset come into after that? Like, and I know you're not through the process yet, but I know you are a strategist woman, where do you go with that? How do you do you put it down? Do you just try to get zen about it? How do you go about it?
I think, look, to be really honest, I think, whilst I'm feeling all of that and there's lots of good positive vibes there, I think when I look to the future, the number one thing is fear. So I definitely have some really weak moments or some really down moments because the future is challenging. If 1/3 of our organisation has lost their job, that means that's a whole lot of people who are out there looking for a job. And we know that the reason we've lost their jobs is because businesses have been self-imploding. So the jobs, there's just not the opportunities out there. Mm-hmm. So my biggest thing at the moment is fear. And I have to try and keep a lid on that fear, because what happens when you let fear take over is that will derail me as I am going forward to put my best self forward for the opportunities that exist out there. The other challenge I have is that you've spoken so beautifully and so highly of what I've done, and you make me feel terribly humble. But that's a problem in itself, because when I go forward for roles and I look at opportunities, I'm prepared to compromise what I'm doing, but employers aren't so willing to do that, because they think that I won't be satisfied, and they think that I won't be happy to stay in a role that maybe is a few levels below what I'm currently doing. So that's a challenge too. How do I present myself, and how do I reassure them and almost guarantee them that, you know, yes, I'll be fine, and yes, I'll stay with this. So, you know, there's lots of unique challenges, which I think once I get to the other side of this, I'll be able to reflect on, and I'll definitely use it as I go forward and talk to people about it and help them with their own challenges. But right now, they're things that I've never encountered before. I've never been here before. So, you know, this is a brand new world for me.
Hey, and like hats off to you, but that is who you are, is your willingness to be open in the fear, because I think more people are going to relate to you than, like you said, a third of people. If you just look at that in itself, a third of people are going to relate. And thank you for acknowledging that the fear is there, that you do have to put a lid on it. However, you recognize that sometimes you can't. It gets bigger than you. And so there's a lot of different challenges. But if you were to think about William, for example, your son, he's into sport, but let's say he was looking for work and he had never been in that position before, what would you be telling him?
So if he was looking for work and
he'd never had work before, so it's like a whole new territory for him. So maybe he has had jobs. I just assumed with sport, maybe he hadn't had work.
No, he actually has. So we've been through this process just this year of him getting his first job, which was really exciting for him. So he works for Woolworths, and which is super cool. And it was a really great process because you know, I wanted to encourage him to build his resume and to think about his achievements, because he'd not had any work before. And so how do you describe yourself and bring out your skills to show that even though you haven't been in a work environment, but to show how those skills that you have are transferable to a work environment. So it was a great process going through that with him and helping him develop his resume, and then walking him through the interview process, and you know, how he needed to present himself and how he needed to respond and to follow up to interviews and communication, to him ultimately then being able to secure his job. So some of the advice I gave him was certainly when he started was about, you know, making sure that he was always being of service. You know, to want to help and to want to ask, you know, what else can I do, and to smile at people and to engage with people, and just to say a warm hello means so much. So it's the simple things that you don't need to be a genius to make an impact. And I think
but that's a difference maker. I think that especially these days, it's not there for everyone. So
it's not. So I you know, they were the sorts of things that I really encouraged him to do. And that's not easy, because you know what I don't know what it's like to be a 15-year-old boy, but I know what it's like to be a 15-year-old girl, and it's awkward when you get to that age. And so I had to really be careful with, you know, what I was doing and saying, so that he could feel, you know, build his own confidence, but also going through that really awkward, difficult time, you know.
I remember my first job, and I never had a normal job after. Must have scarred me, because I was so wanting to do a great job that I'd almost work myself up. We did talk about that, didn't we, before the again? And I remember it feeling so stressful, and any kind of like thing I did wrong, I took really hard, and I really think that was my last working for someone experienced. So I ended up doing lots of my own work after that.
Oh.
But that's not a bad thing. So that was, to me, that's also quite cool, is that I was able to create something independent from that experience.
Definitely.
And so I kind of didn't plan this question, but if you could, because you talked about wanting to work with purpose, and I know that, you know, there's no planet B, and there's a lot of things that really warm your heart. If you could create the perfect job, the ideal thing, you could have it all. Because a lot of people don't do this. They're like a bit scared to do it, but it's just you and me. If you could have whatever you wanted in the ideal, and it might not exist yet, what would you create?
I've sort of been thinking about that, because it's like, well, what do I, where do I go after? Where do I position myself? And look, I think there's a lot of areas. There's not just one thing. I would like to work with, I love working with people. So I obviously want to keep working with people. And I think I've got a great ability to be able to influence and change things, whether that be through people or through what we do. So I would like to work, I think I'd like to work with people. So if there was for example, I would love to see organizations having a chief wellness officer. I think that would be a super important role. Yeah. So that's one area. So, where we're considering, about, our well-being and our resilience and health and lifestyle, all of those things. Yeah. Because that's super important in our everyday. And not just around ourselves. I think what we need to do is to think a little bit more than just about ourselves, because we've become really good at thinking about what do I need and what's important to me. But I think if there was a chief wellness officer's role, it would be about what do we also need to do to take care of everybody else and the planet. So it's that whole, that sort of whole approach. So that's what I'd love to do.
And I put her on the spot, everyone. I hope you realize that's like a really massive question. And thank you for having a go at it. And also, I hope everybody listening has a go. Because that's one thing, a gift my mom gave me, was this ability to give me that feeling like I could make it up. I never felt slotted into lawyer, doctor, like veterinarian. I really always felt like I could create a role that didn't exist. And so I'm going to keep going on you with this question. Really cool about chief wellness officer. I love it. Who would you work for? So if you want to work for a corporation as a chief wellness officer, but you get to choose, you get to create who you want to work for in the whole world. Who would you want to help be well?
Well, me being me, I don't want to make it easy. So I don't want to go and work for the organizations that are already doing good stuff. That would be too obvious, right? I want to go and work with the ones who really need the help. So I'd love to go and work with government and banks and, like the Macquarie Banks of this world and, all of that sort of stuff.
I did not think you were going to say that, but that's perfect.
Yeah. So my brother works for Macquarie Bank, so I can say it. The people who really need to change, who really need to sort of step it up and see, who need to work more with integrity and, see, the true value.
Why did you choose that challenging environment?
Because I like a challenge. There's no point in going and doing it, right? That's why I'm good at building businesses, because, if it's just about, making, keeping it all running smooth, that's not for me. That's why I sold my businesses, once I'd got to a point, where they were making heaps of money and ticking along really nicely. That's when I'd get bored and I'd want to move on.
But do you know what's so cool about hearing your answer? You start to get, I think, in an interview scenario, right? So I was actually applying for, it's a wellness job. And that's like, just go through the process because you've never had a normal job. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was good to do, actually, because I didn't even know how to do a resume. Like, the cover letter. So I Googled the cover letter, right? And I thought, this is ridiculous. Like, the idea, like the way people were describing themselves, it just didn't sound like a person. And also the job description, I'm like, who is this? This is like a robot, an unattainable, perfectionistic model. And so what I love about your answer is, like, as you begin to say it, we get the resilience, like the kind of character that you really bring to something, which to me, it can't be really explained in fancy words, can it? On the cover.
No,
I mean,
no,
yeah.
no, it can't. But that comes to my upbringing too. That was so funny when you were talking about it. My mom has been such, and my dad, but I remember my mom's words. She probably spoke more than dad. She does talk more than, that's where I get it from. I can remember I was only 7 years old, and I grew up in Sydney. I've lived all my life in Sydney, and we were driving in to pick up dad from work, and there was a street sweeper. We have them in Brisbane, but they're not manual anymore. They've got these fancy sort of, like tractor things, and they, clean the bins and the streets and everything. And there was this guy, we were going down Pitt Street in Sydney, and there was this guy there just near Wynyard Station, and he was, sweeping the street, and he was doing an absolutely meticulous, marvelous job. And Mum said to me, Nikki, see that guy? See what he's doing? See what a good job he's doing. Not just what he's doing, but what a good job he's doing. She said, I don't care what you do in your life, but whatever you do it to the best of your ability, and you take pride in it. That was my benchmark. Like, I wasn't expected, I was sent to a private school, all those things, but I was never expected to be a doctor or a lawyer or any of those things, even though, my parents said, you could do that, you've got the capability, but that wasn't the expectation. It was follow your passion and do it to the best of your ability. And I mean, what a great, way to set yourself up, for your future. And I've kind of borrowed that and done it with William. I don't have expectations. You don't have to be this, just, you do what makes you feel great and follow that passion, and it all stands you in good stead. So I think that's really awesome.
Girl, what else do we have to say? That was just so great. And thank you for, voicing your mother's words. The street sweeper has carried through. And, I really, really believe that the spoken word is power. And what you spoke today in front of a lot of people who are going to hear that, it lives in them. And I think that this is what I hope for everyone, that we get more comfortable sharing our heart like that, sharing our dreams, because that's what Nat taught me, is that a lot of people dream in private because they're afraid that they might fail. But not one dream. If it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to raise a dream. And if we don't tell anybody what we want to do, like you just shared, then no one can help us. So I really appreciate you in this state of uncertainty that a lot of people are going to relate to. And I just hope everybody has the balls to do, sorry, that's kind of inappropriate, but just has the balls to do what you just did, which is, inside of the fear, ask yourself, if I could have whatever I want, what would I do? Because I promise you that will have power. And I look forward to hearing some of the really amazing stories of what gets manifested after that. So thank you.
No, thank you. It's been so nice talking to you. It's great.